The Moonlit Rose, A Tale of Beauty and the Beast. Introduction. This is the tale of the Moonlit Rose, a story whispered in the markets of Baghdad, told in the caravanserais along the Silk Road, and passed down through generations like precious silk through gentle hands. So settle into your pillows, let your breathing slow, and journey with me now to a prosperous city by the sea, where our story begins. Chapter 1. The Merchant's Farewell. In a grand house adorned with intricate mosaics and fountains that sang with flowing water, there lived a wealthy merchant named Hassan al-Rashid. His ships sailed to distant lands, to the spice markets of India, the silk roads of Cathay, and the golden shores of Africa. His coffers overflowed with precious gems, rare silks, and exotic treasures from every corner of the known world. But Hassan's greatest treasures were not his riches. They were his 3 daughters, each as different as the stars in the night sky. Yasmin, the eldest, was vain and beautiful, with eyes like polished onyx and a love for the finest things. She dressed in silks from Damascus and adorned herself with jewels that sparkled like captured starlight. Layla, the middle daughter, was clever and sharp-tongued, always calculating, always measuring the worth of things in gold and silver. Her mind was as quick as a desert fox, but her heart was often as cold as moonlight on marble. And then there was Zara, the youngest. Zara was different. While her sisters preened before mirrors and counted their jewels, she would sit in the garden at twilight, watching the stars emerge like diamonds sewn into Allah's dark velvet cloak. She read poetry, tended to the roses, and spoke kindly to every servant in their household. Her beauty was quiet, like the first light of dawn, but her heart was pure as mountain spring water. One evening, as the muezzin's call to prayer echoed across the city, Hassan gathered his daughters in the courtyard. The air was fragrant with jasmine and orange blossoms. A fountain bubbled peacefully nearby, and the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in shades of amber and rose. "My beloved daughters," Hassan began, his voice warm with affection. "Tomorrow I embark on a great journey across the seas. My ships are laden and ready to sail to the lands beyond the horizon. I shall be gone many months, traveling to distant markets and exotic kingdoms." He smiled at each of his daughters in turn. "Tell me, my precious ones, what gifts shall I bring you upon my return? Ask, and if it exists in this world, I shall find it for you." Yasmin stepped forward first, her silk robes rustling like whispers. "Father, bring me a necklace of the finest pearls, pearls that glow with their own inner light, harvested from the deepest ocean by the most skilled divers. I want a treasure that will make every woman in the city green with envy." Hassan nodded, smiling. "It shall be yours, my daughter." Then Layla approached, her eyes gleaming with calculation. "Father, I desire a mirror framed in pure gold and encrusted with rubies and emeralds, a mirror so magnificent that when I look into it, I see not just my reflection, but my true worth in this world." "A worthy gift," Hassan replied. "Consider it done." Finally, Zara stepped forward. She was dressed simply, in a gown of cream-colored cotton, with only a single silver bracelet upon her wrist. Her dark hair fell in gentle waves around her face, and her eyes, those remarkable eyes, held the depth of ancient wisdom. "And you, my Zara?" Hassan asked gently. "What gift shall your father bring to light up those thoughtful eyes?" Zara was quiet for a moment, listening to the evening breeze rustle through the palm trees. Then she spoke, her voice soft as silk. "Father, if you love me and think of me during your travels, I ask only for one thing, a moonlit rose. Hassan's brow furrowed with confusion. A moonlit rose? My child, I have traveled the world many times, but I have never heard of such a flower. What is this rose you speak of? Zara smiled, a mysterious smile that seemed to hold secrets of the universe. I do not know, Father. I only know that I dreamed of it 3 nights in succession. In my dream, I saw a rose that bloomed only under the light of the full moon, a flower of such extraordinary beauty that it seemed not of this world. Its petals glowed with silver light, and when the moonbeams touched it, it sang a silent song that only the heart could hear. Her sisters laughed, their voices cutting through the peaceful evening like sharp knives. A dream flower, Yasmin mocked. Sister, you ask Father to bring you something that doesn't even exist. While we ask for treasures of substance, Layla added with a smirk, you request fairy tales and fantasies. How typical of you, little Zara, always with your head in the clouds. But Hassan raised his hand for silence. He looked at his youngest daughter with an expression of deep tenderness. If this moonlit rose exists anywhere in Allah's vast creation, I shall find it for you, my child. This I promise. That night, Zara stood alone in the garden, looking up at the stars. A warm breeze carried the scent of night-blooming jasmine, and somewhere in the darkness, a nightingale sang its lonely song. She thought of the dream that had visited her 3 nights running, the mysterious island shrouded in mist, the palace of impossible beauty, and the rose that glowed like captured moonlight. In her heart, she felt a strange stirring, as if destiny itself was calling to her across the vast expanse of sea and time. She did not yet know that her simple request would change the course of her life forever, that it would lead to magic and mystery, to terror and tenderness, and ultimately, to a love that would transcend the very boundaries between the human and the magical. The stars wheeled overhead in their ancient dance, and the moon, full and luminous, seemed to smile down upon the young woman in the garden, as if it knew secrets that she had yet to discover. And so, with prayers whispered and fates sealed, the stage was set for a tale of wonder. Chapter 2. The Storm and the Mysterious Island. The next morning, as the sun painted the eastern sky with strokes of gold and crimson, Hassan al-Rashid stood on the dock, watching his crew make final preparations. His flagship, the Jewel of the Seven Seas, was a magnificent vessel with sails as white as desert sand and a hull decorated with intricate carvings that told stories of previous voyages. The merchant embraced each of his daughters. Yasmin and Layla kissed his cheeks perfunctorily, already dreaming of their promised gifts. But when Zara hugged her father, she held him longer and whispered, "May Allah protect you on your journey, Father. Return safely. That is the only gift I truly need." Hassan's eyes misted with tears. "I shall return, my precious one, and I shall bring you your moonlit rose." With the morning tide, the fleet of 3 ships raised their anchors and set sail. The wind filled the sails, and soon the vessels were gliding across the azure waters, leaving the city behind like a fading dream. For many weeks, Hassan's journey was prosperous. He sailed to the spice markets of Calicut, where he purchased cinnamon and cardamom, pepper and cloves, treasures more valuable than gold. In the pearl diving villages of the Arabian Gulf, he found the luminous pearls for Yasmin, each one perfect and gleaming with inner fire. In the goldsmith quarters of Constantinople, he commissioned the magnificent mirror for Layla, a masterpiece of craftsmanship, framed in the purest gold, encrusted with rubies that gleamed like frozen drops of blood and emeralds that captured the very essence of spring forests. But the moonlit rose, this remained elusive. In every port, in every market, Hassan asked the same question. "Have you heard of a moonlit rose?" a flower that blooms only under the full moon's light? The merchants and traders shook their heads. Some laughed, thinking him mad. Others suggested he had been too long at sea, and the sun had addled his wits. One old woman, selling herbs in a shadowy corner of a Damascus market, leaned close and whispered, "Such flowers do not grow in the world of men, master. If they exist at all, they bloom only in the realm between reality and dreams." Hassan's heart grew heavy. He had acquired magnificent gifts for his 2 elder daughters, but for Zahra, his kindest, his most beloved, he had nothing. As the seasons turned and his ship's holds filled with goods, Hassan decided it was time to return home. They set sail on what should have been a calm and uneventful journey across familiar waters. But fate, it seems, had other plans. 3 days into their return voyage, the sky began to change. The crew, seasoned sailors all, noticed it first. The way the birds fell silent, the way the water took on an oily, ominous sheen, the way the air itself seemed to hold its breath. By evening, dark clouds had gathered on the horizon, towering like mountains of smoke and shadow. The ship's captain, old Ahmad, approached Hassan with worry etched deep in his weathered face. "Master, a storm approaches. I have sailed these waters for 40 years, and I have never seen clouds gather with such unnatural speed. We must change course." But before Hassan could respond, the storm struck. It came with a roar like 1,000 lions, with winds that screamed like the very jinn of the desert. Waves rose like liquid mountains, lifting the ship high before plunging it into valleys of churning darkness. Rain lashed the deck like arrows, and lightning split the sky with fire. The crew fought valiantly, but this was no ordinary storm. It had a fury, a purpose, as if nature itself had taken offense at their passage. One by one, Hassan watched helplessly as his other 2 ships were swallowed by the raging sea, disappearing into the darkness with their crew's final screams, lost in the howling wind. The jewel of the 7 seas fought on, but the storm had its way. For 3 days and 3 nights, or perhaps it was longer, for time itself seemed to lose meaning in that chaos. The ship was tossed like a toy in a child's bath. Hassan lashed himself to the mast, praying continuously, reciting every verse of protection he knew, calling upon Allah for mercy. Around him the crew did the same, their voices rising in desperate prayer above the storm's fury. And then, silence. Hassan opened his eyes, hardly believing he still drew breath. The storm had vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. The sea was now calm as glass, reflecting a sky of impossible blue. The morning sun shone with gentle warmth, and in the distance, an island. But what an island! It seemed to shimmer in the morning light, appearing almost translucent, as if it existed only partially in the real world. Lush green hills rose from shores of white sand. Palm trees swayed in a breeze that Hassan could not feel. And crowning the highest hill stood a palace that took his breath away. The palace was like something from the most extravagant tales of the 1001 Nights, all white marble and golden domes, with minarets that seemed to reach toward heaven itself. Its walls gleamed in the sunlight, and even from this distance, Hassan could see intricate mosaics that covered every surface, telling stories in colored tiles. "Captain Ahmad," Hassan called out, but there was no answer. Looking around, he realized with a chill that he was alone on the ship. The crew had vanished, whether lost to the storm or to some other fate. He did not know. The ship, as if guided by an invisible hand, drifted toward the island. With no crew to help him, Hassan had no choice but to let it run aground on the sandy beach. He gathered what he could: a water skin, a knife, and the precious gifts for his daughters, and waded ashore. The sand beneath his feet felt real enough, warm and fine. The sun on his face felt genuine, but something about this place whispered of enchantment, of magic, of things that should not be. Hassan stood on the beach, alone and uncertain, looking up at the magnificent palace on the hill. Smoke rose from its chimneys, flags fluttered from its towers. Somewhere he could hear the sound of a fountain, and the air was fragrant with flowers he could not name. This island should not exist. This palace should not be here, in the middle of the vast ocean, leagues from any known land. But it was here, real as the sand beneath his feet. And Hassan al-Rashid, merchant prince, father of 3 daughters, and seeker of the moonlit rose, took his first steps toward a destiny he could never have imagined. The path leading up to the palace was paved with smooth stones that seemed to glow with their own inner light. On either side, gardens stretched out in impossible perfection. Flowers of every color bloomed regardless of season. Fountains sang their liquid songs, and fruit trees bent low with their burden of ripe offerings. Hassan walked as if in a dream, his footsteps echoing in the strange silence. No birds sang here, no insects buzzed, only the sound of water and wind, and his own heartbeat, loud in his ears. As he approached the palace gates, they swung open silently, inviting him in. Hassan hesitated. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, to return to his ship and somehow sail away from this enchanted place. But where would he go? His crew was gone. He did not even know where in the vast ocean he was, and besides, something drew him forward, a curiosity, a sense that his destiny lay beyond those gates. He stepped through, and the gates closed behind him with a soft, final sound. Chapter 3: The Enchanted Palace. The courtyard beyond the gates was a vision of paradise. A magnificent fountain stood at its center, its water dancing and sparkling in elaborate patterns that seemed to defy the very laws of nature. The water leaped and spiraled, forming shapes of birds and flowers and geometric patterns of breathtaking complexity, all without any visible mechanism to create such wonders. The palace walls were covered in mosaics more intricate than any Hassan had ever seen, and he had seen the finest works in Constantinople and Damascus. These mosaics seemed almost alive, the tiny tiles catching the light in ways that made the depicted scenes appear to move, to breathe, to exist. One scene showed a garden where mosaic peacocks spread their tails, and Hassan could have sworn he saw the tiles shimmer as if the birds were actually moving. Another depicted a night sky where stars wheeled in their courses, the lapis lazuli tiles glowing with their own luminescence. "Hello?" Hassan called out, his voice sounding small in the vast courtyard. "Is anyone here? I mean, no trespass. My ship was caught in a storm and I—" His voice echoed off the marble walls, but no answer came. The palace seemed utterly deserted, yet everywhere were signs of recent habitation. The fountain ran with fresh water. Flowers in the gardens were freshly watered, their petals still heavy with moisture. Somewhere, Hassan could smell bread baking and the rich aroma of spiced coffee. He wandered through the palace like a man in a dream. Each room was more magnificent than the last. Libraries filled with leather-bound books in a dozen languages. Music rooms with instruments that seemed to hum with potential melodies. Galleries lined with paintings and sculptures of such exquisite beauty that Hassan found himself weeping at their perfection, and everywhere that sense of recent presence, as if the palace's inhabitants had just stepped out for a moment and would return at any second. In what appeared to be a grand dining hall, Hassan stopped in wonder. A table was set for one, and upon it was a feast fit for a sultan. Roasted meats fragrant with spices, rice pilaf studded with almonds and dried fruits, fresh flatbread still warm from the oven, honeyed pastries that gleamed golden in the afternoon light, a pitcher of cool sherbet beaded with condensation, fresh dates and figs arranged artfully in silver bowls. Hassan's stomach reminded him that he had eaten little during the storm and nothing since washing ashore. But was it safe to eat? Whose food was this? Where were the servants who had prepared it? As if in answer to his unspoken questions, he heard a voice, soft, musical, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Eat, traveler. You are a guest in this palace. All that you see is offered freely. You are safe here, Hassan al-Rashid." The merchant spun around but saw no one. "Who are you? Show yourself." Only silence answered him. Yet the voice had been real, of that he was certain, and it had known his name. Hunger and exhaustion eventually overcame caution. Hassan sat at the table and began to eat. The food was the most delicious he had ever tasted, each dish perfectly spiced, each flavor a small revelation. The sherbet was cool and refreshing, flavored with rosewater and citrus. The pastries melted on his tongue like sweet clouds. As he ate, his fear began to fade, replaced by a strange contentment. Whatever magic governed this place, it seemed benevolent. The food was real, the comfort genuine. After the meal, Hassan rose to explore further. He discovered a bedchamber that seemed to have been prepared specifically for him. A bed with silk sheets and cushions soft as clouds, a basin of warm water for washing, perfumed with orange blossom. And laid out on the bed, fresh clothes, robes of the finest silk in deep blue and gold, perfectly sized, as if they had been made for him alone. Hassan looked down at his own salt-stained, storm-damaged garments. The temptation was too great. He washed and changed into the new robes, marveling at their softness, their perfect fit. It was as if the palace itself was caring for him, attending to his needs without visible servants. That evening, as the sun began to set, Hassan stood on a balcony overlooking the gardens. The sky transformed into a canvas of purples and oranges, and as the first stars began to appear, the garden below came alive with soft, magical light. Paths illuminated themselves with a gentle glow. Fountains sparkled with what appeared to be liquid starlight, and then Hassan saw it, the garden, a particular section of the palace grounds that he had not noticed before, separated from the rest by a high wall covered in climbing jasmine. A gate stood open, almost invitingly, and beyond it, Hassan descended the stairs as if pulled by invisible strings. His feet carried him across the courtyard, through the gate, and into the secret garden beyond. It was a rose garden, hundreds upon hundreds of roses in every color imaginable, red as heart's blood, white as fresh snow, yellow as summer's sun, pink as dawn's first light. Their fragrance filled the air with such sweetness that Hassan felt almost drunk on it. He wandered among them in the gathering dusk, admiring their beauty, when he came to the garden's heart. There, in a clearing surrounded by ancient olive trees, stood a single rose bush growing beside a pool of still water, and upon this bush bloomed a single flower unlike any Hassan had ever seen. The rose was white, but not merely white. It seemed to contain all colors and no color simultaneously, as if it were made of pure light given form. Its petals were translucent, delicate as finest silk, and as Hassan watched in breathless wonder, the full moon began to rise over the garden wall. As the moonlight touched the rose, something miraculous happened. The flower began to glow with its own inner radiance, soft silver light pulsing gently like a heartbeat. The petals seemed to shimmer and shift, and Hassan could have sworn he heard a sound. Not quite music, not quite words, but something that spoke directly to his soul. The moonlit rose, the flower from Zahra's dreams. Here, in this impossible garden, on this enchanted island, Hassan's heart filled with joy and wonder. He had found it, the one gift that had seemed impossible, the one treasure that had eluded him across all his travels. His beloved Zahra's request would be fulfilled. Without thinking, his hand reached out. The rose's stem was thornless, and it came away from the bush with the gentlest pull, as if it had been waiting for him. He held it carefully, marveling at how its glow continued even severed from its plant, the silver light pulsing between his fingers like captured moonbeams. "At last," Hassan whispered. "At last, I have a gift worthy of my daughter's pure heart." But even as the words left his lips, the air around him changed. The temperature dropped suddenly, as if winter itself had breathed upon the garden. The pleasant breeze became a cold wind. The stars seemed to dim in the sky above, and behind him Hassan heard a sound that turned his blood to ice, a deep, rumbling growl that seemed to come from the very earth itself, a sound no natural animal could make, a sound that spoke of rage and ancient power. He turned slowly, still clutching the rose, and his eyes widened in terror. Standing at the garden's entrance, silhouetted against the moonlit sky, was a figure from nightmares. Massive and hulking, covered in dark fur or scales. It was impossible to tell in the dim light. Eyes glowed with amber fire, and when the creature's mouth opened in a snarl, Hassan saw teeth like daggers gleaming white in the darkness. The beast had revealed itself. And Hassan al-Rashid realized with dawning horror that he had just stolen something of great value from a being of terrible power. The merchant's hand trembled, the moonlit rose's gentle glow now seeming to mock him, a small light in the face of approaching darkness. And the beast began to move forward, each step shaking the ground, each breath rumbling like distant thunder, coming closer. Closer, closer. Chapter 4. The Beast's Demand. The creature moved into the moonlight, and Hassan's mind struggled to comprehend what his eyes were seeing. The beast was enormous, easily twice the height of a man, with a body that seemed to shift between animal forms, as if it could not decide whether to be lion, bear, or wolf, and so had become all three and none. Its head was leonine but wrong, too large, with a mane of dark fur that seemed to move with its own life, like shadows given substance. The arms were powerful and muscular, ending in hands that bore curved claws like scimitars. Its legs were like those of a great bear, and when it moved, Hassan could see the rippling of muscles beneath fur that gleamed like black oil in the moonlight. But the eyes were what froze Hassan's heart in his chest. They burned with amber fire, yes, but within that fire was something else, intelligence, awareness, and a profound sadness that seemed at odds with the creature's terrifying appearance. "You dare," the beast rumbled, its voice like stone grinding against stone, like the roar of distant thunder, "to steal from my garden, you, who I welcomed as a guest, who I fed and clothed and sheltered?" Hassan fell to his knees, still clutching the rose, his voice barely a whisper. "Mercy, my lord, I meant no offense. I was searching for this flower for my daughter, and when I saw it, Silence!" The word crashed over Hassan like a physical blow. The beast advanced, each step deliberate, its shadow falling across the merchant like the shadow of death itself. "I gave you the hospitality of my home," the creature continued, its voice now quieter, but no less terrible. "I asked nothing in return. I made no demands. You were free to eat my food, wear my clothes, rest in my chambers. All I possessed was yours, except the rose garden, except this." The beast's claw pointed at the glowing flower in Hassan's trembling hands. "This rose is precious beyond your understanding, merchant. It blooms once in a generation, under the full moon, and its magic sustains the enchantments of this place. You have taken more than a flower. You have stolen a piece of this palace's very soul." Tears streamed down Hassan's face. "Please, mighty lord, I did not know. I will return it. I will replant it. I will do anything to make amends." The beast stared down at him for a long moment, those amber eyes unreadable. Then it spoke, and its words were measured, deliberate, as if each one cost it something. "The rose, once plucked, cannot be replanted. Its magic is broken, its power spent. What is done cannot be undone." The creature's massive head tilted slightly. "But perhaps there is another payment that would satisfy the debt you have incurred." Hope flickered in Hassan's heart. "Anything, my lord. I am a wealthy merchant. I have ships. Well, I had ships, filled with goods, pearls, silks, spices, gold. Name your price." A sound escaped the beast. It might have been laughter, but it held no humor, only bitterness. "Do I look as though I need your gold, merchant? Look around you. I dwell in a palace more magnificent than any sultan's. I want for nothing, except—" The creature's voice trailed off, and for a moment, that profound sadness in its eyes deepened into something like despair. "Except what, my lord?" Hassan whispered. The beast turned away, looking up at the moon. When it spoke again, its voice was quieter, almost human. "This palace is a prison as much as a paradise. I have lived here alone for more years than I care to count, cursed to wear this form, isolated from all human contact. The enchantment that binds me here is powerful beyond your comprehension." It turned back to Hassan, and now the merchant could see something else in those strange eyes. Loneliness, perhaps. A longing for connection that transcended the creature's monstrous form. "You took the moonlit rose for your daughter," the beast said slowly. "You mentioned her when you entered the garden. Tell me, how many daughters do you have?" "3, my lord," Hassan replied, confused by the question. "And you love them?" "With all my heart." "Would you die for them?" Without hesitation. The beast nodded slowly. "Then hear my price, Hassan al-Rashid. You may keep the rose. You may return to your ship, which you will find mysteriously repaired and provisioned. You may sail home to your city and your daughters." Hope bloomed in Hassan's chest. "But too soon," as the beast continued. "But in exchange, one of your daughters must come here to take your place. One of them must come to live in this palace, to be my companion, to break the terrible solitude of my existence." "No!" The word burst from Hassan before he could stop it. "Never. I will not trade my daughter's freedom for a flower. I will not condemn one of my precious girls to imprisonment. Even to save your own life?" The beast's voice turned cold again. "Because make no mistake, merchant, if no daughter comes in your stead, then you must return yourself, and if you do not, then I will hunt you across sea and land, through every city and every desert until I find you. The curse that binds me to this island can be stretched that far, at least. There is nowhere you could hide that I could not find you." The creature leaned down, bringing its massive face close to Hassan's, and the merchant could see every detail of that terrible visage, the sharp teeth, the burning eyes, the alien intelligence that lurked behind the bestial features. "But I am not without mercy," the beast said softly. "Let the choice be theirs. Tell your daughters what has transpired. Explain the situation fully, and let one of them choose freely to come in your place. If, after hearing all, none will come, then you must return yourself and accept whatever fate awaits you here." Hassan's mind raced. Return himself? Leave his daughters orphaned, or ask one of them to sacrifice themselves for his foolish mistake? How? Hassan's voice cracked. How long must she stay? If one of my daughters comes, will she be a prisoner forever? The beast straightened, turning away. That I cannot answer. The curse that binds me is complex. Its conditions obscure even to me. But I swear this, any daughter who comes here will be treated with respect. She will want for nothing. She will be as honored a guest as you were, with one difference. She must stay. She must keep me company. She must see beyond this monstrous form and accept me as a companion, perhaps as a friend. The last word was spoken so softly, with such longing, that Hassan felt a stir of pity despite his terror. And if she does this? Hassan asked. If one of my daughters comes and stays and befriends you, what then? Then perhaps, the beast said, its voice distant, the curse might break, or perhaps not. I do not know. I have been alone so long, I no longer remember what the witch's exact words were. But this I know. I am tired of solitude. I am tired of being a monster in a beautiful cage. I need to remember what it was like to be human. The beast turned back to Hassan, and its expression, if such a face could be said to have expressions, seemed to soften slightly. Go, merchant. Return to your home. You have 1 moon cycle, 30 days, to send one of your daughters to me, or to return yourself. At the next full moon, I will expect my debt to be paid. The creature waved one massive paw, and suddenly the garden was filled with mist. Hassan felt himself being lifted, carried on cool winds that smelled of salt and sea. The palace, the garden, the beast itself, all faded into white fog. When his vision cleared, Hassan found himself standing on the deck of the Jewel of the 7 Seas. The ship floated on calm waters, fully repaired, its sails crisp and white, its holds, he somehow knew, filled with all the goods and treasures he had gathered. The mysterious island was already receding in the distance, becoming translucent, fading like a dream in morning light. Soon it was gone entirely, leaving only endless ocean and a sky full of stars. In Hassan's hand, the moonlit rose still glowed with its gentle silver light, beautiful and terrible, a gift and a curse, a wonder and a doom. The merchant fell to his knees on the deck and wept, clutching the rose that had cost him so dearly, the rose that might yet cost him everything he held dear. Above him, the full moon rode high and indifferent in the starry sky, bearing witness to a father's anguish and the cruel price of careless wishes. The wind filled the sails, and the ship began to move, carrying Hassan back toward home, toward the impossible choice that awaited him, toward a reckoning with the daughters he loved more than life itself. And behind him, across the vast expanse of ocean, on an island that existed between dream and reality, a beast stood alone in a moonlit garden, looking at the empty space where the rose had been, and wondered if this time, finally, after so many years of cursed solitude, there might be a chance for redemption. Chapter 5. The Daughter's Sacrifice. The journey home took 7 days and 7 nights, though it should have taken 3 times as long. The ship sailed as if guided by invisible hands, the winds always favorable, the seas always calm. It was as if the ocean itself conspired to speed Hassan toward his fate. Each day, the merchant stood at the bow, staring toward the horizon, the moonlit rose carefully protected in a special box lined with silk. Its glow never faded, pulsing gently like a heart that refused to stop beating, a constant reminder of the debt he owed. Hassan barely ate. He barely slept. His mind churned endlessly with the impossible choice before him. How could he ask one of his beloved daughters to sacrifice herself? How could he condemn her to live with that creature, that beast, in that enchanted prison? But the alternative, to return himself, to leave his daughters without a father, to face whatever fate the beast had in store for him, that seemed equally impossible. He prayed constantly, his forehead touching the deck during the 5 daily prayers, begging Allah for guidance, for mercy, for some solution he could not see. But the heavens remained silent, and the ship sailed ever onward toward home. On the 7th evening, as the sun set in brilliant shades of crimson and gold, Hassan saw the familiar outline of his city's harbor, the white buildings gleaming on the hillside, the minarets of the great mosque reaching toward heaven, the palm trees swaying along the waterfront. Home. The word that had always meant safety and love now felt heavy with dread. The harbor master was astonished to see Hassan's ship return. News had reached the city of the terrible storm, and all 3 vessels had been presumed lost with all hands. When the jewel of the 7 seas glided into port, crowds gathered on the docks, crying out in wonder and celebration. But Hassan barely noticed. He arranged for his goods to be unloaded, settled his accounts with mechanical efficiency, and hired a cart to carry him and his daughter's gifts home. The precious box containing the moonlit rose he carried himself, clutched close to his chest. As his house came into view, Hassan saw his daughters rush out to greet him. They had been standing vigil by the windows, as they had every evening since news of the storm reached them, hoping against hope that their father would return. "Father, father!" they cried, running toward him. Yasmin and Layla reached him first, embracing him with tears of joy. "We thought you were dead. The whole city thought you were lost." But Zara hung back slightly, and when her eyes met her father's, Hassan saw that she understood immediately that something was terribly wrong. Her intuition, always keen, read the sorrow and fear in his face as clearly as if it were written in ink. "Come inside," Hassan said quietly. "We must talk, all of you." In the courtyard where, months ago, he had asked them what gifts they desired, Hassan now gathered his daughters once more. The evening call to prayer echoed across the city, but for once, Hassan did not stop to pray. This conversation could not wait. He brought out the gifts first. For Yasmin, the necklace of luminous pearls, each one perfect, glowing with inner light as promised. She gasped with delight, immediately fastening it around her neck and running to a mirror to admire her reflection. For Layla, the golden mirror encrusted with rubies and emeralds, a masterpiece of craftsmanship that made her eyes gleam with satisfaction. She held it up, turning it this way and that, calculating its worth even as she admired its beauty. And then, for Zara, Hassan brought out the silk-lined box. His hands trembled as he opened it. The moonlit rose lay within, glowing with its ethereal silver light, more beautiful than anything that should exist in the mortal world. Its petals seemed to contain galaxies. Its fragrance was like all the gardens of paradise distilled into a single scent. Zara's breath caught in her throat. "Father, it's exactly as I dreamed. Exactly. How did you find it?" And then Hassan told them everything. He spoke of the storm that destroyed his fleet and scattered his crew, of the mysterious island that appeared from nowhere, of the palace that welcomed him with invisible hospitality, of the garden where the moonlit rose grew, of how he had taken it, thinking only of his youngest daughter's wish, and finally of the beast, of its terrible appearance and its even more terrible demand. As he spoke, Yasmin's face grew pale and she clutched her pearls as if they might protect her. Layla's expression became calculating, her quick mind already seeking escape routes, loopholes, ways to avoid the terrible price. But Zara, Zara listened with growing understanding, her dark eyes never leaving her father's face. And when Hassan finished speaking, when he buried his face in his hands and wept, begging his daughter's forgiveness for bringing this curse upon them, Zara rose from her seat. "I will go," she said simply. "No!" Hassan's head snapped up. "Absolutely not! I forbid it!" "I will go," Zara repeated, her voice calm but firm. "Father, you took the rose for me. This situation exists because of my request. The debt is mine to pay." Yasmin spoke up, her voice shrill with fear and selfishness. "Zahra, don't be foolish. Father can return himself. He's the one who took the flower after all. Why should any of us suffer for his mistake?" Layla nodded quickly. "Besides, you said this beast gave him 30 days. Perhaps in that time we can find a solution. Hire soldiers to attack the island. Consult with scholars about breaking curses. Surely there must be another way." But Zara shook her head. "You don't understand. This is not about tricks or force or clever solutions. This is about honor, about keeping one's word, about—" She paused, looking down at the moonlit rose in its box. "About fate." She turned to her father, and her expression was serene, almost peaceful. "Father, you told me about the beast's eyes. You said there was sadness in them, loneliness, a longing to be human again. He is a monster, Zara, a creature of nightmares." "Perhaps," Zara said softly. "Or perhaps he is a man trapped in a monster's form, suffering from a curse not of his making. Either way, I will go. My mind is made up." Hassan argued. He pleaded. He commanded. But Zara, gentle Zara, who had always been so obedient, would not be swayed. She had made her decision, and nothing could change it. That night, Zara stood in the garden of her father's house, the same garden where she had dreamed of the moonlit rose, and looked up at the stars. The full moon was waning now. In 3 weeks it would be full again, and she would have to leave. She was afraid. She would be lying if she claimed otherwise. The description of the beast had terrified her, but beneath the fear was something else, a strange certainty, a feeling that this was her path, her destiny, that everything in her life had been leading to this moment. She thought of all the stories she had read, all the fairy tales and legends from distant lands. So many of them spoke of transformation, of curses and redemption, of love that could break through any enchantment. Were those just stories? Or did they contain some essential truth about the universe? "Are you really so brave, little sister? Or just foolish?" Zara turned to find Layla standing in the garden doorway, her golden mirror tucked under one arm. Her middle sister's expression was unreadable in the moonlight. "Perhaps both," Zara replied honestly. "But what choice do I have? Let father return to face the beast's wrath? He would not survive it. I can see it in his eyes. The encounter aged him years in moments." "You could let him stay away," Layla suggested. "How would this beast find him? We could move to another city, change our names, and live as fugitives, always looking over our shoulders, always wondering when the beast might appear." Zara shook her head. "That is not living. That is merely existing in fear." Layla was quiet for a moment, then spoke again, her voice unusually soft. "I would not go. I want you to know that. If it were my choice, I would find another way. I am not as noble as you, Zara." "I know," Zara said without judgment. "You are who you are, sister. As am I. Will you—" Layla hesitated. "Will you be safe there? What if the beast harms you?" Zara smiled slightly. "Father said the beast gave its word that any daughter who came would be treated with respect and honor. Creatures of magic cannot break their sworn word. Every story agrees on that. I will be physically safe at least." And emotionally, spiritually, living with a monster in isolation? That, Zara admitted, I do not know, but I have always been good at finding beauty in unexpected places. Perhaps I can find it even there. The sisters stood together in silence, listening to the night sounds of the garden, the whisper of palm fronds, the trickle of the fountain, the distant call of a night bird. I will miss you, Layla said finally, and there was genuine emotion in her voice. For all her calculating nature, she did love her little sister in her own way. And I you, Zara replied. Take care of father. Do not let him blame himself. This is my choice, freely made. The weeks passed too quickly and too slowly at once. Hassan tried everything to dissuade his youngest daughter. He offered to return himself 12 times. He consulted with scholars and holy men, seeking a way to break the beast's curse, or at least modify its terms. But none had answers, and Zara remained resolute. Yasmin, after her initial panic, seemed almost relieved that the problem was solving itself, though she had the grace to feel slightly guilty about it. She spent her time wearing her pearls to social gatherings, accepting congratulations on her father's miraculous return, and pointedly not thinking about what her little sister would soon face. As the full moon approached, Hassan made the journey to the harbor with Zara. He had wanted to accompany her all the way to the island, but she had refused. This was something she needed to do alone. The jewel of the 7 seas awaited them, mysteriously provisioned once again, its sails ready, its course somehow already set. Hassan understood that the ship was under the beast's enchantment, that it would carry Zara to her destination, whether he accompanied her or not. On the dock, father and daughter embraced for a long moment. Hassan wept openly, no longer caring who saw. Forgive me, my precious one. Forgive me for bringing this upon you. There is nothing to forgive, father, Zara whispered. You gave me the greatest gift. You showed me I was loved enough that you would search the world for my dream. How many daughters can say that? She pulled back and placed her hand on his chest, over his heart. Keep me here, and I will keep you in mine. We will not truly be separated, not where it matters. If he harms you, if he breaks his word, You will do nothing, Zara said firmly, but gently. You will live, father. You will be happy. You will remember that you have 2 other daughters who need you. Promise me this. Through his tears, Hassan promised. Zara boarded the ship alone. As it pulled away from the dock, she stood at the stern, waving to her father until he was just a small figure on the receding shore, until the city itself became a smudge on the horizon, until there was nothing but sea and sky and the unknown ahead. The journey took 3 days. The ship sailed itself, its course true, the winds always favorable. Zara spent the time in contemplation and prayer. She read from a small book of poetry she had brought. She watched the dolphins that sometimes swam alongside the ship, as if escorting her to her fate. On the 3rd evening, as the sun set and the full moon began to rise, the island appeared, just as her father had described, shimmering, translucent, existing halfway between reality and dream. The palace crowned the highest hill, its white walls glowing in the moonlight, its golden domes reflecting the last rays of the dying sun. The ship glided to shore and stopped. The gangplank lowered itself. Zara took a deep breath, gathered her small bag of belongings, and stepped onto the island's white sand. The moment her feet touched the shore, she felt it, the magic that permeated this place. It hummed in the air like a distant song. It vibrated through the ground beneath her feet. This was not a normal place. The very laws of nature bent differently here. The path to the palace lay before her, glowing softly in the twilight. Zara began to walk. As she climbed toward the palace, the gardens on either side burst into bloom. Flowers opened as she passed, as if welcoming her. Fountains began to play, their water catching the moonlight. Somewhere she heard music, soft and distant, like wind chimes made of glass and silver. The palace gates stood open, waiting. Zara passed through them into the courtyard her father had described. The magnificent fountain danced its impossible patterns. The mosaics gleamed with inner light, and everywhere was that sense of anticipation, as if the palace itself had been holding its breath and could finally exhale. "Hello?" Zara called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I am Zara, daughter of Hassan al-Rashid. I have come as promised." For a long moment there was only silence. Then, that voice, the one her father had mentioned, spoke from everywhere and nowhere. "Welcome, Zara. Welcome to your new home. All that you see is yours. Every room, every garden, every treasure. You are not a prisoner, but an honored guest." "Where is your master?" Zara asked. "Where is the beast?" A pause. Then, "He is uncertain. He fears frightening you as he frightened your father. He wishes to give you time to settle, to become comfortable with your new surroundings." "I would like to meet him," Zara said firmly. "I did not come all this way to live in a palace with an invisible host." Another pause, longer this time. Then the voice said, "Tomorrow. Tonight, rest, eat, refresh yourself. Tomorrow, if you still wish it, he will show himself." Zara wanted to argue, but exhaustion from the journey suddenly overwhelmed her. "Very well, tomorrow then." The invisible presence, or perhaps the palace itself, guided her through the corridors to a suite of rooms that took her breath away. A bedroom with a bed that looked like a cloud given solid form. A bathing room with a pool of warm water that smelled of roses and jasmine. A sitting room with shelves full of books in a dozen languages. A wardrobe filled with clothes in her exact size, in colors she loved, in styles she had always admired. Everything she could possibly want or need, provided by an invisible host who had prepared for her arrival with meticulous care. That night, Zara bathed in the rose-scented water, dressed in a soft silk sleeping gown she found laid out for her, and sat by the window looking out at the moonlit gardens. The moonlit rose, the one her father had taken, was gone, but the garden was still achingly beautiful. She thought about the beast, somewhere in this vast palace, hiding from her, afraid to show himself. A monster cursed to solitude, longing for companionship but terrified of rejection. And Zara made a decision. Tomorrow, when she met him, she would not scream. She would not faint as her father had described. She would look upon him, no matter how terrible his appearance, and she would speak to him as one rational being to another. Because beneath the fear and the strangeness, she sensed something her father's brief encounter had not revealed. This beast, whoever or whatever he truly was suffering. And if there was one thing Zara's compassionate heart could not ignore, it was suffering. She fell asleep with moonlight streaming through her window, and she dreamed of roses that sang silent songs, and amber eyes that held depths of sorrow, and a voice that spoke with the loneliness of centuries. Chapter 6. The Face of the Beast. The morning sun streamed through windows of colored glass, painting Zara's room in jeweled light, ruby red, sapphire blue, emerald green, and gold like captured sunlight. She woke slowly, momentarily disoriented, before remembering where she was. The enchanted palace, the beast's domain, her new home. Zara rose and found that breakfast had been laid out in her sitting room. Fresh fruit, warm bread with honey, mint tea that steamed gently in a silver pot. She ate slowly, gathering her courage for the meeting ahead. After breakfast, she dressed in one of the gowns from the wardrobe, a simple but elegant dress of deep blue silk that made her dark eyes seem even darker. She brushed her long hair until it shone, then left it loose down her back. Whatever happened today, she would face it as herself, without pretense or armor. "I am ready," she announced to the empty room. "I wish to meet the master of this palace." The invisible voice responded immediately. "Are you certain? There is no need to rush. Take days, weeks if you need to become comfortable here." "I am certain," Zara replied firmly. "Waiting will only increase my anxiety. Better to face this now." A long pause. Then, "Very well. He waits for you in the garden where the moonlit rose grew. The palace will guide you." As Zara stepped into the corridor, she noticed something remarkable. The mosaics on the walls, the ones her father had mentioned seemed to move, were indeed moving. They showed the route she needed to take, animated scenes directing her, a mosaic bird flying in the direction she should walk, a mosaic stream flowing toward her destination, mosaic flowers blooming to mark her path. She followed the artistic guidance through the magnificent palace, through halls lined with books and galleries filled with sculptures, past fountains and through courtyards fragrant with jasmine. Finally, she reached the garden wall covered in climbing roses, the entrance to the secret garden. The gate stood open. Zara paused at the threshold, her heart pounding. This was it. Beyond this gate, the beast waited, the creature who had terrified her father, the monster cursed by a witch's spell. She took a deep breath, whispered a prayer for courage, and stepped through. The garden was breathtaking in the morning light. Roses of every color bloomed in wild profusion. Ancient olive trees provided dappled shade. At the garden's heart, the pool of still water reflected the azure sky like a mirror, and beside the pool, where the moonlit rose had once grown, stood the beast. Even prepared as she was, Zara's breath caught in her throat. The creature was enormous, just as her father had described, twice the height of a man, with a body that seemed to shift between leonine, ursine, and lupine features. Dark fur covered most of its form, rippling like shadows over heavily muscled limbs. Its hands bore curved claws that gleamed like polished steel, but it was the face that held her attention, that leonine head with its impossible proportions, the mane of dark fur that moved like living darkness, the mouth full of teeth that could tear through steel, and the eyes, those amber eyes that burned like fire but held such sadness, such loneliness, such desperate hope. The beast stood completely still, as if afraid that any movement might frighten her away. It had positioned itself as far from the garden gate as possible, giving her space, trying to appear non-threatening despite its impossible size and obvious power. "Lady Zara," the beast rumbled, and now she could match that deep voice to the creature before her. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me." Zara's legs trembled. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to flee back to the palace, to lock herself in her room and refuse to come out. The beast was terrifying in a way that bypassed rational thought and struck directly at some primal core of human fear. But she thought of her father's courage in returning home with the truth. She thought of her own decision to come here. She thought of that profound sadness in those amber eyes, and she did not run. Instead, she took a step forward, then another and another. "My Lord Beast," she said, and was proud that her voice barely trembled. "I am Zara, as you know. I have come to fulfill the bargain my father made." The beast's eyes widened slightly, as if surprised that she could speak at all. You are not screaming." "No," Zara agreed. I am not screaming, though I will admit you are quite different from any being I have encountered before." Was that a hint of humor she detected in those amber eyes? A diplomatic way of saying I am monstrous. "I was trying to be polite," Zara said, and took another step closer. She was trying desperately to see past the terrifying exterior, to focus on those eyes, on the intelligence and awareness they revealed. The beast made a sound that might have been laughter, though it came out as a low rumble that Zara felt in her chest. "You are braver than your father. He fainted at the sight of me." "My father is a merchant, not a warrior, and he was caught by surprise, having stolen from you." Zara managed a small smile. "I at least knew what to expect, more or less." She was close enough now to see details. The texture of the fur, the way the beast's breath misted slightly in the morning air, the careful way it held its clawed hands, as if conscious of the damage they could do. "Why do you approach?" the beast asked, and there was genuine confusion in its voice. "Most would run, should run. I am a monster, a nightmare made flesh." "Are you?" Zara tilted her head, studying him. "Or are you a man cursed to wear a monster's shape? There is a difference." The beast went utterly still. "How did you— Your father did not tell you that." "My father told me you were cursed. The rest I deduced. Monsters do not build libraries and fill them with poetry in a dozen languages. Monsters do not create gardens of such careful beauty. Monsters do not offer hospitality to strangers and keep their word about the treatment of guests." Zara took another step, close enough now that she had to tilt her head back to look up at the beast's face, close enough to see the fine details of the fur, the patterns in the amber eyes, the slight movement of the mane in the breeze. "A monster would have killed my father for his theft," she continued softly. "A monster would have demanded his life, not offered alternatives. A monster would not be standing here, afraid of frightening me, trying to be kind." The beast's eyes, those remarkable, terrible, sad eyes, filled with moisture. When it spoke, its voice was rough with emotion. "You see too clearly, Zara, daughter of Hassan. Yes, I was a man once, before the curse, before—" The creature's voice trailed off. "Before what?" Zara prompted gently. The beast turned away, looking out over the garden. "Before I learned that compassion can be punished as easily as cruelty. Before I discovered that doing the right thing can lead to damnation. Before—" Suddenly, without warning, the beast's legs buckled. It swayed, and Zara saw with alarm that it was about to collapse. Acting on instinct rather than thought, she rushed forward, reaching out as if she could somehow catch or support this enormous creature. Of course she couldn't. The beast was far too large, far too heavy. But her gesture, the instinctive move to help rather than flee, seemed to startle it. The beast caught itself, remaining upright, and stared down at her in amazement. You reached toward me. You moved to help me." "You were falling," Zara said simply, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Of course I tried to help. Are you unwell? Should I call for—" She trailed off, realizing she had no idea who she would call. There were no servants here, only the invisible presence that seemed to run the palace. The beast shook its massive head. "I am not ill, only overwhelmed. You are the first person in more years than I can count to look upon this face without immediate terror and disgust, to speak to me as if I were still a thinking being rather than a mindless monster, to instinctively offer help rather than flee. The creature's voice broke, and to Zara's astonishment, a single tear rolled down its monstrous face, catching the sunlight as it fell. In that moment, Zara's fear evaporated. Here before her was not a monster, but a soul in pain. a being who had suffered terribly and endured long loneliness. Whatever crimes this creature might have committed to earn such a curse, it had clearly paid for them many times over. "My lord beast," she said softly, "perhaps we should sit. You look unsteady, and I confess, I am still somewhat overwhelmed by all of this." The beast nodded mutely and moved to a stone bench beneath one of the olive trees. It sat, an oddly human gesture in that inhuman form, and Zara sat beside it, carefully maintaining a small distance but not fleeing to the far end of the bench as the beast clearly expected. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the sound of the fountain, the rustle of leaves, the distant song of birds. Finally, Zara spoke. "Will you tell me about the curse, about who you were before? You don't have to if you don't wish to, but I would like to understand." The beast looked at her with those amber eyes, and Zara saw surprise, hope, and deep uncertainty warring in their depths. "You truly wish to know? You are not merely being polite." "I truly wish to know," Zara confirmed. "We are to be companions, are we not? That was the bargain. You sought company, an end to loneliness. Companions should know each other's stories." A sound escaped the beast, half sob, half laugh. "Companions? I never thought, I never dared hope." It straightened slightly, gathering itself. "Very well. If you wish to hear, I will tell you. But it is not a happy tale." "Most tales worth telling are not," Zara said gently. "Please." "I am listening." And so, in that garden where the moonlit rose had once grown, with the morning sun warm upon them and the scent of roses filling the air, the beast began to speak. Chapter 7. The Beast's Tale. "My name," the beast began, its deep voice soft with memory, "was Rashid ibn Malik al-Zahir. I was a prince, third son of the sultan of a kingdom that no longer exists, erased from maps and memory by the very curse that transformed me." Zara listened without interrupting, watching the play of emotions across that inhuman face, subtle shifts in expression that she was beginning to read despite the monstrous features. "I was not the heir," the beast continued. "That burden fell to my eldest brother, who bore it well. Nor was I the spare. That role belonged to my middle brother. I was the unnecessary third son, free to pursue my own interests without the weight of kingdom on my shoulders." The creature's claws traced absent patterns in the dirt beside the bench. "I studied philosophy, poetry, astronomy, mathematics. I trained in swordsmanship not because I expected to lead armies, but because it disciplined the body as scholarship disciplined the mind. I was content, happy even." A long pause. When the beast spoke again, its voice was darker. "There was a sorcerer in our kingdom. Malik al-Sharir he was called. Malik the Evil. He served as my father's advisor, but his counsel was always suspect. He suggested policies that benefited the rich and harmed the poor. He pushed for laws that gave him more power. My father, in his declining years, was blind to the sorcerer's manipulations. I saw it, though. I spoke against him in council. I argued for justice, for mercy, for the protection of the kingdom's weakest citizens. Malik al-Sharir hated me for it. But while my father lived, even his dark magic could not strike openly at a prince of the blood." The beast's voice grew heavy with sorrow. "Then one day, I was riding through the city market. I saw an old man, bent with age, dressed in rags, selling simple clay pots he had made with his own hands, and I saw Malik al-Sharir approach him. The sorcerer wanted one of the pots but refused to pay. When the old man protested, Malik raised his hands, preparing to cast a spell. I could see it gathering, dark magic that would have killed the old potter where he stood, over a pot worth less than a handful of copper coins. Zara gasped softly but remained silent, letting the beast continue. I intervened. I stepped between them. I told Malik that in my kingdom, we do not kill merchants for defending their wares. I paid for the pot myself, gave it to Malik, and sent the old man away safely. The beast's claws clenched. I thought that was the end of it. A minor confrontation. Embarrassing for the sorcerer, perhaps, but nothing more. I was wrong. That night, Malik al-Sharir came to my chambers. He was incandescent with rage. How dare I humiliate him before commoners? How dare I, a third son, a prince of no importance, defy him? He said I had made an enemy of someone far more powerful than I could imagine. I laughed at him. I told him his threats meant nothing, that my father would protect me, that the kingdom's laws applied even to him. I was so young, so foolishly confident. The beast's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Then he began to chant. The spell was like nothing I had ever heard. Words in languages that predated human civilization, syllables that hurt to hear. I drew my sword, but it was like trying to cut smoke. The magic wrapped around me like chains of invisible fire. He cursed me, transformed me into this abomination. But that was not enough for his revenge. He cursed my entire kingdom, my family, my brothers, the Sultan, all of our subjects, everyone I had ever known or loved, erased, not killed, but simply unmade, as if they had never existed at all. Tears flowed freely down the beast's monstrous face now. He left me alone in a kingdom of ghosts and erased memories. This palace materialized around me, my prison and my tomb, the island separated from the world, existing halfway between reality and dream. And I remained immortal in this form, remembering everyone and everything that no longer existed. Unable to die, unable to change, unable to do anything but endure. The beast looked up at the sky. That was 70 years ago, Zara. 70 years of solitude, of madness and grief, of slowly learning to accept what I had become. The palace provides for my needs, but it cannot provide companionship, cannot provide purpose, cannot provide hope. Until your father appeared, until someone actually spoke to me, even in fear, until you came and looked at me without immediate horror in your eyes. Silence fell over the garden. Zara sat processing this tale of tragedy and transformation. Finally, she spoke, her voice gentle but firm. The sorcerer's revenge was monstrous. What happened to you was profoundly unjust. You saved a life and were punished for it. She paused. But you survived. You endured. And you maintained your humanity despite losing your human form. The beast turned to look at her. How can you say I maintained my humanity? Look at me. I am looking at you, Zara said. And I see someone who keeps his word, who treats guests with honor, who built a library and filled it with wisdom, who tends gardens, who weeps for the loss of loved ones. These are not the actions of a monster, Prince Rashid ibn Malik al-Zahir. These are the actions of a man. The beast stared at her in wonder. You used my name, my true name. No one has spoken it in 70 years. Would you prefer I continue to call you Beast? Zara asked with a slight smile. No, The creature's voice broke. Thank you. You cannot know what it means to hear my own name after so long. They sat together for a while longer, the morning lengthening into midday. The initial terror had faded for Zara, replaced by something more complex. Pity, certainly, but also a strange kinship. She too felt like an exile of sorts, torn from her home and family, living in an enchanted prison, however beautiful it might be. Finally, Zara stood. Prince Rashid, I am tired from yesterday's journey and this morning's intensity. I think I would like to rest, but perhaps this evening we might dine together, continue our conversation?" The beast, Rashid, rose as well and bowed in a gesture that was achingly human despite the monstrous form. "I would be honored, Lady Zara, truly honored." As Zara walked back toward the palace, she heard Rashid's voice call softly after her. "Thank you. Thank you for not running. Thank you for listening. Thank you for giving me hope." She turned back and smiled at the enormous creature standing in the garden. "Thank you for trusting me with your story, Prince Rashid. I will see you this evening." That night, they did dine together, in a magnificent hall with a table set for two. The invisible servants provided a feast, but neither Zara nor Rashid ate much. They were too busy talking. They spoke of philosophy and poetry, of stars and mathematics, of the books in the library and the flowers in the garden. Slowly, carefully, they began the delicate process of becoming friends. Zara watched the play of emotion across that inhuman face and realized something remarkable. She was no longer afraid. The beast was terrifying in appearance, yes, but the being within that form was gentle, cultured, deeply kind. When they parted for the night, Rashid bowed again. I cannot tell you what your presence means to me, Lady Zara. After so many years alone, to have someone to speak with, someone who sees beyond this cursed form." "I am glad to be here," Zara said, and realized with some surprise that it was true. Yes, she missed her home and her father. Yes, the situation was strange and frightening in many ways, but there was also something deeply satisfying about bringing light back into this lonely creature's existence. That night, Zara lay in her magnificent bed, looking out at the moonlit gardens, and wondered about curses and transformation, about the nature of humanity and monstrosity, about fate and choice and the strange paths life sometimes took. And somewhere in the palace, a beast who had not known hope in 70 years stood at his own window, looking up at the same moon, and dared to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, this curse might not be forever after all. Chapter 8. Days of Enchantment. The days developed into a pattern, comfortable in its consistency yet never dull. Mornings, Zara would wake to find breakfast waiting in her chambers. She would eat slowly, then explore the palace's endless wonders. There was always something new to discover. A gallery she hadn't noticed before, filled with sculptures of impossible delicacy. A music room where instruments played themselves when she entered, performing symphonies that brought tears to her eyes. A conservatory where tropical birds of brilliant plumage flew freely among exotic flowers. The palace seemed alive, responsive to her moods and needs. When she felt restless, new corridors would appear, inviting exploration. When she wanted quiet, she would find herself in cozy reading nooks she didn't remember seeing before. It was as if the palace itself was trying to make her happy, trying to ease the strangeness of her situation. Afternoons, she would meet with Rashid, sometimes in the library, where they would read together, discussing philosophy and poetry, sometimes in the gardens, where they would walk among the flowers while talking of everything and nothing, sometimes in the music room, where Zara discovered that Rashid, despite his fearsome claws, could play the oud with surprising gentleness. The beast, for she still thought of him as such, though she always called him Rashid, was the most educated being she had ever encountered. 70 years of solitude had been spent in study, and he had read every book in his vast library multiple times. He knew astronomy and could point out constellations, telling her the stories behind each one, both the tales she knew and others from cultures long forgotten. He knew poetry and could recite verses in languages she had never heard, then translate them into Arabic, so beautiful it made her heart ache. He knew mathematics and would trace geometric patterns in the sand of the garden paths, showing her the hidden harmonies in the universe's structure. But more than his knowledge, Zara came to appreciate his kindness. Rashid was unfailingly gentle, always conscious of his size and strength. He moved carefully when she was near, keeping distance between them unless she chose to close it. He listened when she spoke, truly listened, in a way that made her feel heard and valued. He remembered everything she told him: her favorite color, deep blue like twilight; her favorite flower, jasmine; her favorite food, honey cakes with rose water. The next day she would find her room filled with jasmine. The day after, honey cakes would appear at tea time. It was as if he was trying to recreate the world around her preferences, to make her cage as comfortable as possible. Though it was a cage, she reminded herself. Beautiful, yes. Comfortable, certainly. But still a prison. She was here because of a bargain, a debt paid. And while Rashid treated her with honor and respect, she was not free to leave. She tried not to dwell on this too much. What good would it do? She had made her choice. Her father was safe, her family protected. And if she must be confined somewhere, surely an enchanted palace with a thoughtful companion was better than many alternatives. Evenings, they would dine together, conversations stretching late into the night. Rashid told her more of his previous life, stories of his brothers, of his father's court, of a kingdom that no longer existed except in his memory. Sometimes his voice would break, and Zara would see tears in those amber eyes as he spoke of people long erased from existence. In turn, Zara told him of her own life, of growing up with two sisters who never understood her, of her father's love and protection, of quiet evenings in the garden, reading poetry and watching stars, of a life that, while privileged, had often felt lonely in its own way. "We are both exiles," Rashid observed one evening. "You from your home, I from my very humanity. Perhaps that is why we understand each other." "Perhaps," Zara agreed, "though I have found that understanding someone doesn't require similar circumstances. It merely requires willingness to listen." "Then you are the first person in 70 years willing to truly listen," Rashid said quietly. "The first person to see beyond this cursed form." One afternoon, about 3 weeks into Zara's stay, she was exploring the palace and came upon a locked door. It was the first locked door she had encountered. Every other room had opened freely at her approach. Curious, she tried the handle, but it wouldn't budge. "That room is forbidden," Rashid's voice came from behind her, making her jump. She hadn't heard him approach. He moved with surprising silence despite his size. "What's in there?" Zara asked, turning to face him. Rashid's expression, she was learning to read it now, showed discomfort. "My chambers, my private space, the one place in the palace that is mine alone." "Oh." Zara felt embarrassed. "I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to intrude. I was just exploring and—" "You have done nothing wrong," Rashid said quickly. "The palace is yours to explore. Only that one room is closed to you. Everything else, all of it, is yours." There was something in his tone, a desperation almost, as if he feared she would be angry at this single restriction after he had given her access to everything else. "That's perfectly reasonable," Zara said gently. "Everyone needs private space. I wouldn't want you wandering into my chambers uninvited either." The relief on Rashid's face was palpable. Thank you for understanding. There are things in that room, things from my previous life, things too painful to share yet. You don't need to explain, Zara assured him. Your privacy is your own, Rashid. I respect that. They stood in the corridor for a moment, an awkward silence between them. Then Rashid spoke hesitantly. Would you like to see the observatory? I haven't shown you yet, and the evening will be clear. The stars should be magnificent. Zara smiled. I would love that. The observatory was at the palace's highest point, in a tower topped with a dome that could open to the sky. Inside was an enormous telescope, bronze and crystal, more art than instrument, and star charts covering the walls. As darkness fell, Rashid opened the dome, and the night sky was revealed in all its glory. Here, on this enchanted island, the stars seemed brighter than anywhere else, as if they were closer to the earth, as if the veil between mortal world and celestial realm was thinner. Rashid showed Zara planets and constellations, nebulae and distant galaxies. He told her the stories behind the star patterns, tales from Persia and Greece and Arabia, from cultures she had heard of and others that no longer existed. That constellation, Rashid said, pointing with one massive claw, we called the lover's heart. The story was that a young man fell in love with a star maiden, and she descended from heaven to be with him. But mortals and celestials cannot easily mix. When her father, the king of stars, discovered what she had done, he transformed them both into stars, placing them in the sky where they would be together forever, but never able to touch. That's beautiful, Zara murmured, and sad. Most love stories are, Rashid replied quietly. Love requires sacrifice, requires acceptance of loss. The moment you open your heart to another, you accept the possibility of pain. Zara glanced at him. The beast's profile, outlined against the starlight, was at once terrible and somehow noble. Is that why you lived alone for so long? Because love requires too much risk? Rashid was quiet for a long moment. No, he finally said. I lived alone because no one could see past this face, because I was cursed into isolation. But before? Yes, I loved once, a woman in my father's court. I never told her. I was a third son with no prospects, and she was promised to a neighboring prince. Then the curse came and she ceased to exist, unmade along with everyone else I had ever known. I'm sorry, Zara said softly. It was a lifetime ago. Many lifetimes. Rashid turned to look at her, and in the starlight, his amber eyes held such depth of feeling that Zara's breath caught. But I learned that love, even unspoken, even unrequited, is worth the pain it brings. Because it reminds us that we are alive, that we are capable of feeling something beyond mere existence. They stayed in the observatory late into the night, talking of stars and stories, of love and loss, of the strange paths fate takes us down. And when they finally descended to return to their respective chambers, Zara realized something that both surprised and troubled her. She was beginning to be truly happy here. Chapter 9. The Request to Return Home. 3 months passed in the Enchanted Palace. 3 months that felt both like an eternity and like no time at all. Zara had settled into her new life with a contentment that surprised her. Her days were filled with exploration, learning, and companionship. Her evenings with Rashid had become the highlight of each day. She had grown so accustomed to his appearance that she sometimes forgot he looked monstrous at all. When she saw him now, she saw past the fur and fangs to the gentle soul beneath. She noticed the way his amber eyes lit up when discussing a favorite poem, the careful grace with which he moved despite his size, the thoughtful pauses before he spoke, as if weighing each word to ensure it conveyed precisely what he meant. They had become true friends, perhaps the truest friend Zara had ever had. Unlike her sisters, who had never understood her contemplative nature, Rashid appreciated her quiet thoughtfulness. Unlike the suitors who had once called on her father's house, seeking her hand for her dowry, Rashid valued her mind, her opinions, her insights. But despite this contentment, Zara felt a growing ache in her heart. She missed her father. She worried about him constantly. Was he well? Was he blaming himself for her situation? Were her sisters treating him kindly? One evening, as she and Rashid sat in the library after dinner, Zara finally voiced what had been troubling her. "Rashid, I have a request to make, a favor to ask." The beast looked up from the book he had been reading, immediately attentive. "Anything within my power, Zara. You need only ask." She took a deep breath. "I wish to visit my home, to see my father, just to know he is well, to reassure him that I am safe and happy here." Rashid went very still. The book in his hands closed with a soft sound. "You wish to leave." "Not leave," Zara said quickly. "Visit. There is a difference. I would return, I promise. I just need to see him, to hold his hand, to tell him that I am well, that you treat me with kindness, that he should not blame himself for what happened." "How long?" Rashid's voice was carefully neutral, but Zara could see the tension in his massive frame. "A year," Zara said. "1 year at home, and then I will return. I give you my word." "A year?" Rashid's voice rose slightly. "Zara, that is not a visit. That is... "I know it seems long," Zara interrupted gently, "but my father has aged since I left. I can feel it in my heart. He needs me, and I need to know he is well. 1 year to care for him, to ensure my sisters are not neglecting him, to set my mind at ease. Then I will return. I promise you, Rashid, I will return." Rashid stood abruptly, his great size suddenly seeming to fill the entire library. He paced to the window, his back to her, and Zara could see the rigid set of his shoulders, the clench of his clawed hands. "You don't understand," he said quietly. 70 years I was alone, 70 years of silence and solitude and slowly going mad. Then you came, and for the first time in longer than I can express, I remembered what it was like to be alive, to have purpose, to have hope." He turned back to face her, and Zara saw anguish in those amber eyes. "And now you ask me to return to that solitude? For an entire year? To sit in this palace alone once more, counting the days, wondering if you will truly return or if some reason will arise to keep you away?" "I will return," Zara insisted, rising to her feet. "Rashid, I give you my word, on my honor, on my father's name, on everything I hold sacred, I will return." "Words," Rashid said bitterly. "Promises. How many promises have been broken throughout history? How many oaths forgotten?" "Not mine," Zara said firmly. She crossed to where he stood and, for the first time, placed her hand on his furred arm. She felt him flinch at the contact, not from fear, but from surprise. In all their time together, they had maintained careful distance. This was the first time she had willingly touched him. "Rashid, look at me." Slowly, the beast's gaze lowered to meet hers. "I will return," Zara repeated. "I am not asking for freedom from our bargain. I am asking for temporary leave to care for my father. You, of all people, understand family love. You, who grieve your lost brothers and father still. Would you deny me the chance to see mine?" Rashid's expression crumbled. "That is unfair. You know I cannot refuse when you put it that way." "Then you'll let me go?" Hope bloomed in Zara's chest. Rashid was silent for a long moment, wrestling with himself. Finally he spoke, his voice heavy with resignation and fear. Yes, yes, I will let you go. For 1 year. But Zara, I beg you, remember your promise. If you do not return when the year ends, I do not know if I will survive returning to solitude. The loneliness will destroy me this time. Your absence will kill me as surely as any blade. I will return, Zara promised again. On the night of the next full moon, exactly 1 year from tonight, I will be back. Count on it. Then make ready. Tomorrow morning, the ship will be prepared to take you home. And Zara, his voice dropped to barely a whisper, thank you for these 3 months, for your companionship, for seeing past this cursed form, for giving me hope, even if it proves temporary. It won't be temporary, Zara said softly. I will return, Rashid, I promise. That night, Zara packed her few belongings with mixed emotions. She was overjoyed at the thought of seeing her father again, but the look in Rashid's eyes haunted her. The fear and vulnerability she had seen there made her heart ache. In the morning, she found Rashid waiting in the courtyard. He looked as though he had not slept at all. His amber eyes were dim with exhaustion and sorrow. The ship is ready, he said quietly, and I have prepared gifts for you to take to your family. A chest of jewels and gold, so your father will know that you have been well treated. Fine silks for your sisters. And this. He held out a small object, a mirror, but not like the ornate golden one he had given Layla. This was simple, framed in dark wood carved with intricate patterns. The glass seemed to shimmer with an inner light. This is a magic mirror, Rashid explained. If you wish to see me, to know how I fare, simply look into it and think of me. It will show you the palace, show you that I am well. And I have its twin, which will allow me to see you, to know that you are safe and happy. Zara took the mirror carefully. Thank you, Rashid. I will treasure it. They stood facing each other, an awkward silence between them. So much to say, yet no word seemed adequate. Finally, Rashid spoke. 1 year, on the next full moon. 1 year from tonight. I will be here, Zara promised. She turned to go, then impulsively turned back. Before she could second-guess herself, she stood on her toes. He was so tall she could not reach otherwise, and kissed his furred cheek. Rashid froze, his eyes wide with shock. Thank you, Zara whispered, for everything, for your kindness, for your friendship, for showing me that true beauty has nothing to do with appearance. I will return, my friend, I promise. Then she hurried to the ship before she could see the tears streaming down the beast's face, before she could see him fall to his knees in the courtyard, clutching the spot where she had kissed him as if it were the most precious thing in the world. The journey home took 3 days, just as her journey to the island had. Zara spent much of the time looking into the magic mirror, watching Rashid move through the palace like a ghost. He barely ate. He spent hours in the library staring at the chair where she used to sit. He walked through the gardens alone, his massive shoulders slumped with grief. I will return, Zara whispered to the mirror. I promise, my friend, I will return. On the 3rd day, her city's harbor came into view, and there, waiting on the dock as if he had stood vigil there for 3 months straight, was her father. Chapter 10. Sister's Treachery. Hassan al-Rashid had aged visibly in the 3 months since Zara had last seen him. His hair had turned almost entirely gray, and new lines creased his face. But when he saw his youngest daughter descending from the ship, life seemed to flood back into him. Zara, my precious Zara! He ran to her, embracing her tightly, weeping openly. You're alive, you're safe. Oh, my daughter, I have prayed every day for your safety. I am well, father, Zara assured him, returning his embrace. I am more than well. I am unharmed and have been treated with the greatest respect and kindness. Hassan pulled back, searching her face as if to verify her words. Truly? The beast did not harm you? Did not mistreat you? Truly, Zara confirmed. He is. Father, he is not what we thought. He is cursed, yes, and his appearance is fearsome, but his heart is gentle. He has been my friend these past months. Hassan looked skeptical, but relieved. I do not understand how you can speak of that creature with such fondness. But if you say you are well, then I will believe you. Come, let us go home. Your sisters will be overjoyed to see you. As it turned out, overjoyed was perhaps too strong a word. Yasmin and Layla were in the courtyard when Zara and Hassan arrived. Their reactions were complex, surprise certainly, but also something else. Disappointment, resentment. Zara couldn't quite identify it. Little sister, Yasmin said, embracing Zara with a show of warmth that didn't quite reach her eyes. What a surprise! We didn't expect to see you again for, well, forever, really. We assumed you were permanent fixture in the Beast's palace, Layla added, also embracing Zara. What brings you home? I have leave to visit for 1 year, Zara explained. Then I must return. Must return? Yasmin's eyes gleamed with an emotion Zara couldn't read. How noble of you, to honor your bargain even when you could simply stay here. Over the following days, Zara settled back into her father's house. She spent her time caring for Hassan, whose health had indeed declined during her absence. The guilt he felt over her situation had eaten at him, making him ill with worry. You must stop blaming yourself, father, Zara told him repeatedly. What happened was fate, and truly I have not suffered. The beast, his name is Rashid, father, Prince Rashid, has been nothing but kind to me. She told him stories of the Enchanted Palace, of the libraries and gardens, of the conversations that stretched late into the night. Hassan listened with growing amazement. You speak of him as if he were human, Hassan observed. He is human, Zara replied softly. Where it matters, in his heart and mind and soul. The curse only changed his appearance, not his essential nature. At night, Zara would look into the magic mirror and watch Rashid. He seemed to be surviving her absence, but barely. He spent hours in the garden where they had first met, sitting by the pool where the moonlit rose had grown. He would pick up books and then set them down without reading. He wandered the palace like a lost soul. Once, she saw him holding something. She leaned closer to the mirror to see what it was and realized with a catch in her throat that it was a scarf she had left behind. He held it carefully as if it were made of spider silk, and she saw him raise it to his face, perhaps catching her lingering scent. I miss you too, Zara whispered to the mirror. Soon, my friend. Soon I will return. But her sisters had other plans. Zara did not realize it at first, but Yasmin and Layla were deeply jealous. While they had received material gifts from their father's journey, Zara had received something far more valuable, an adventure, a purpose, a story worth telling. She had lived in an enchanted palace, befriended a cursed prince, and gained wisdom and experience far beyond theirs. More than that, the treasure Rashid had sent with Zahra, the chest of jewels and gold, was worth more than both their gifts combined, and Zara spoke of returning to the beast as if she wanted to go back, as if her time there had been valuable rather than a punishment to be endured. The sisters' envy grew with each passing day, festering into something darker. She speaks of him constantly, Yasmin complained to Layla one evening when Zara was caring for their father. Rashid this, Prince Rashid that, as if he were some romantic hero rather than a cursed monster. She has treasures beyond ours, Layla added, her mind always calculating. Jewels we could never afford, and she plans to return to get more, no doubt, while we remain here with our lesser gifts. What if, Yasmin said slowly, a cruel plan forming in her mind. What if she didn't return? Layla looked at her sister sharply. What do you mean? She promised to return in 1 year, on the next full moon. But what if circumstances prevented her? What if father fell ill again, truly ill, and she felt she couldn't leave his bedside? What if we convinced her that her duty was here, not with some monster in an enchanted palace? But she gave her word, Layla pointed out. You know Zara. She would never break a promise. Then we must make her, Yasmin said, her expression calculating. We must create situations that delay her, keep her here past the deadline. Once she has broken her promise, surely she could not return. The shame of breaking her word would prevent it, and she would have to stay here with us, no longer the special one with her magical adventure. Layla considered this, her own envy winning out over what little conscience she possessed. What did you have in mind? And so the sisters began their treachery. As the year progressed and the full moon approached, they began their campaign. Small things at first, asking Zara to stay home from market trips to tend to imaginary emergencies, claiming that Hassan seemed unwell when Zara mentioned preparing for her departure, creating small crises that required her immediate attention. Then, as the full moon drew closer, their tactics became more desperate. Father has been coughing, Yasmin lied one evening, 2 weeks before Zara's promised return date. I heard him last night. I think he may be falling ill again. Zara immediately went to check on Hassan, who was perfectly fine. But the seed of worry had been planted. The physician said father needs constant watching, Layla added a few days later. Another lie. He said the next few weeks are critical. You wouldn't leave him now, would you? But I must return, Zara protested. I gave my word. Rashid is expecting me. Rashid, Yasmin sneered. You speak of that monster as if he were your beloved. Have you forgotten he is the reason you were torn from your family in the first place? That's not fair, Zara replied. Father took the rose. Rashid only asked for the debt to be paid, and he has been nothing but kind to me. Kind? Layla laughed bitterly. He holds you prisoner. He forced you to live with him. That is not kindness, sister. That is captivity, no matter how gilded the cage. The sister's words began to wear on Zara. Doubt crept into her mind. Was she abandoning her father? Was her loyalty to Rashid misplaced? Was she being foolish to return to the island when she could stay here, safe with her family? Each night, she looked into the magic mirror, watching Rashid. He was preparing for her return. She could see it. The palace was being decorated with fresh flowers. New books had been added to the library, ones she had mentioned wanting to read. In the garden, he had planted jasmine bushes, her favorite flower. He was counting the days, waiting for her, trusting in her promise. I will return, Zara whispered to the mirror each night. I will keep my word. But her sister's campaign intensified. 3 days before the full moon, Yasmin claimed that Hassan had collapsed and was calling for Zara. When Zara rushed to his room, she found her father peacefully sleeping, but Yasmin insisted he had been delirious just moments before, calling her name. 2 days before the full moon, Layla accidentally hid Zara's traveling clothes, causing her to waste precious hours searching for them. The day before the full moon, both sisters worked themselves into hysterics, begging Zara not to go, claiming their father needed her, that her place was here with her family, not with some cursed monster on a magical island. Just 1 more week, Yasmin pleaded. Stay one more week to ensure father is stable. Surely your beast can wait that long. He is not my beast, Zara said firmly. His name is Rashid, and yes, he can wait. But he shouldn't have to. I gave my word for 1 year. 1 year ends tomorrow night on the full moon. I will be on that ship and I will return to the island. But that night, as Zara slept, her sisters enacted their final treachery. They took the magic mirror from her room and hid it where she would not find it. Then they reset all the clocks in the house, turning them back by several hours. When Zara woke on the day she was to depart, the false clocks told her she had time still. She spent the morning saying goodbye to her father, who wept but understood she must keep her promise. "You have been my greatest joy, Zara," Hassan said, holding her hands. "And while I will miss you terribly, I am proud that you honor your word. This beast, this Rashid, is fortunate to have your friendship." As Zara prepared to leave for the harbor, her sisters continued their delays. A wheel on the cart broke and needed repair. The driver claimed he needed to tend to the horses first. A sudden rain shower made the roads too dangerous to travel. By the time Zara finally reached the harbor, the sun was setting. The full moon was already rising over the horizon, huge and luminous, and she realized with growing horror that she was late. The bargain had been to return on the night of the full moon, exactly 1 year from when she left, but the moon was already up and she was still here on the dock, boarding a ship that now had to sail through darkness. "No, no, no," Zara whispered, looking up at the moon. "Please, please let me reach him in time. Let him know I tried. Let him know I kept my promise, even if I arrived late." The ship set sail, cutting through dark waters under the full moon's light, and Zara stood at the bow, watching the horizon, praying to Allah and to fate and to whatever magic governed the enchanted island. "Hold on, Rashid," she whispered into the wind. "Hold on, I'm coming. I promised you I would return, and I will keep my word. Just hold on." Behind her in the city she was leaving, her sisters smiled with satisfaction, believing they had won. They did not understand, could not understand, that some promises transcend time and space, that some bonds cannot be broken by mere delays, that some love is strong enough to overcome even the cruelest curse. But they would learn. Oh yes, they would learn. Chapter 11. The Dying Beast. The journey to the island took 3 days, just as it always had. But to Zara, each day felt like a year. She stood at the bow of the ship from dawn until dusk, willing it to move faster, begging the winds to blow stronger. She had discovered her sister's treachery when she unpacked and found the magic mirror missing. Without it, she had no way to see Rashid, no way to know if he was well or if he believed she had broken her promise. "Please be patient," she whispered to the absent mirror. "Please understand. I am coming. I did not forget you." On the second night of the journey, a storm blew in. Not the terrible, unnatural storm that had brought her father to the island, but a real storm nonetheless. The ship tossed on angry waves, and Zara clung to the rail, her hair whipping in the wind, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "I'm coming," she shouted into the storm, as if Rashid might somehow hear her across the vast distance. "I promised, and I keep my promises." On the morning of the third day, the island finally appeared on the horizon. But something was wrong. The island looked dimmer somehow, less substantial. As the ship approached, Zara realized with growing dread that the palace no longer gleamed as it had. Its white walls looked gray, its gardens appeared wilted. Even the very air around the island seemed heavy, oppressive, as if mourning. The ship ran aground, and Zara didn't wait for the gangplank. She hitched up her skirts and jumped into the shallow water, splashing to shore and running up the beach toward the palace. The gates stood open, but no longer welcoming, merely abandoned. Zara ran through them into the courtyard. The fountain, which had always danced with impossible patterns, now merely trickled weakly. The mosaic tiles on the walls had lost their luster, their animated scenes frozen and lifeless. "Rashid!" Zara called out. "Rashid, where are you? I'm here. I've returned." Only silence answered her. Zara ran through the palace, her heart pounding. The library was dark, its shelves somehow looking dustier, as if years rather than days had passed. The music room was silent, its instruments covered in cobwebs. The galleries were shadowed, their beautiful artworks faded and dim. "Rashid!" she called again, her voice breaking. "Please, please answer me!" She ran to his private chambers, the one room that had always been forbidden to her. The door stood open now, its lock broken, as if nothing mattered anymore. She rushed inside but found it empty. The room was sparse, containing only a simple bed, a desk covered in papers, and on the walls, drawings. Hundreds of drawings, all of her. Zara stopped, her breath catching. Rashid had drawn her in every pose, every expression. Reading in the library, walking in the garden, laughing at something he'd said, sleeping in a chair by the window. The drawings were beautiful, detailed, clearly the work of countless hours. He had been drawing her, remembering her, immortalizing every moment they had shared. Tears blurred Zara's vision, but she couldn't stop to examine them further. She had to find him. She ran to the gardens. Surely he would be in the gardens, in the place where they had first met. The rose garden looked abandoned, the flowers dying, their petals browning and falling. But at the garden's heart, by the pool where the moonlit rose had once grown, she saw him. Rashid lay on the ground, his massive form curled on its side, motionless. His fur was matted and dull. His eyes were closed, and even from a distance, Zara could see he was not breathing. "No!" The word tore from her throat in a scream. "No, no, no!" She ran to him and fell to her knees beside his head. Up close he looked even worse, gaunt, as if he had not eaten in days, his magnificent form reduced to skin and bone beneath the fur. "Rashid," she sobbed, placing her hands on his face. "Rashid, I'm here. I came back. I promised I would come back, and I did. Please, please wake up. Please don't leave me." But there was no response, no movement, no breath. He was dead. The beast who had waited 70 years for companionship had waited 3 days more for her return, and then his heart had simply stopped, unable to bear another abandonment, unable to face returning to solitude, unable to survive her broken promise. "But I didn't break my promise," Zara cried, tears streaming down her face. "I came back. I'm here. You have to wake up. You have to know that I kept my word." She gathered his massive head into her lap, cradling it as best she could, her tears falling onto his fur. Around her, the garden grew darker, the dying flowers releasing one last burst of fragrance, as if saying goodbye. "I love you," Zara whispered, the words surprising her even as she spoke them. But they were true. She realized that now. Too late. Somewhere in the past months, friendship had transformed into something deeper. She had fallen in love with this gentle, cursed soul. She had fallen in love with his kindness, his intelligence, his lonely heart that had opened to her despite 70 years of isolation. "I love you, Rashid ibn Malik al-Zahir," she said louder, her voice breaking. "I love you, and I came back for you. Not because of the bargain, not because of my promise, but because I wanted to, because you are my dearest friend, because you see me as no one else ever has, because in your company I am more myself than I have ever been." She bent over him, pressing her forehead to his, her tears soaking into his fur. "Please come back. Please don't leave me alone. I love you. Do you hear me? I love you." But the beast remained still and cold in her arms, and Zara wept as if her heart would break, because it was breaking, shattered into pieces by the loss of something precious she had only just realized she possessed. The full moon rose over the garden, huge and luminous, exactly as it had been a year ago when she left. Its silver light fell on the scene below, a young woman weeping over the body of a monster, her tears glowing like pearls in the moonlight, her love declared too late, her promise kept but meaningless in the face of death. And then, something changed. The air itself seemed to shimmer. The dying flowers suddenly burst back into bloom. The fountain's trickle became a rushing flow, and Rashid's body, cold and still in Zahra's arms, began to glow with a soft silver light. The light was coming from within Rashid, growing brighter with each passing moment, until it was almost too brilliant to look at directly. She shielded her eyes, watching through her fingers as the transformation began. The massive body began to shrink. The fur receded. The monstrous features softened and reformed. It was like watching 70 years unwind in moments, the curse pulling back like a tide, revealing what had been hidden beneath all along. When the light finally faded, Zara found herself looking not at the beast, but at a man. He was perhaps 30 years old, with dark hair that fell to his shoulders and a short beard. His face was handsome in a classical way. Strong features, a noble nose, high cheekbones. But it was his eyes that held her attention. The same amber eyes, exactly the same, filled with the same depth and intelligence and kindness she had come to know. Those eyes fluttered open, focusing on her face. For a moment, confusion reigned in their depths. Then recognition dawned, followed by wonder. "Zara?" The voice was different, human, smooth, but still unmistakably his. Am I dreaming? Am I dead?" "Neither," Zara sobbed, laughing through her tears. "You're alive. You're human again. The curse is broken." Rashid lifted one hand, a human hand with normal fingers instead of claws, and stared at it in wonder. Then he touched his face, feeling the human features, the lack of fur, the smooth skin. "How?" he whispered. "The curse. The witch said only if someone loved me in my monstrous form. But how could anyone?" His eyes met Zara's, and understanding dawned. "You," he breathed. "You loved me, even as I was." "Especially as you were," Zara replied, helping him sit up. He was shaky, weak from his ordeal, but alive and human. "I loved you for your kindness, for your gentle heart, for the way you saw me as a person, not just a beautiful object, for the conversations that made me think and laugh and feel truly understood for the first time in my life." Rashid reached up and touched her face, his human fingers trembling. "I thought you had abandoned me. When the full moon came and you didn't return, I thought you had decided to break your promise, to stay with your family where you belonged. I thought I would never see you again." "I tried to come on time," Zahra explained quickly. "But my sisters, they sabotaged me. They hid my mirror, changed the clocks, delayed my departure. I left as soon as I could, but I was 3 days late. I'm so sorry. I kept my promise, Rashid. I came back." "You came back," he repeated, wonder in his voice. "You loved me. You broke the curse." Suddenly his expression changed to alarm. "The island, the palace. When I was dying, I felt everything dying with me. The magic was failing, the enchantment unraveling. Is it?" But even as he spoke, They could see the garden transforming around them. The roses bloomed more vigorously than ever. The trees straightened and greened. The pool's water became crystal clear, reflecting the moonlight like liquid silver. And in the center of the garden, where nothing had grown since the moonlit rose was taken, a new bud appeared. As they watched in awe, it opened, unfurling petals of translucent white that glowed with inner light. A new moonlit rose, reborn from the ashes of the curses breaking. "The island is healing," Zara whispered. "Your curse is broken. The magic is transforming from binding to blessing." Rashid struggled to his feet, still weak but determined. Zara helped him stand, supporting his weight. He was tall, very tall, but human-sized now, no longer the towering beast. Yet when he looked at her, she saw the same soul she had come to love. "Zara," he said softly, "you gave up a year of your life for me. You kept your promise despite your sister's attempts to stop you. You loved me when I was a monster. I have no right to ask anything more of you. You are free now. The bargain is fulfilled. The curse is broken. You can return to your home, to your family, to the life you should have had." Zara looked up at him, this man who had been a beast, who had treated her with nothing but kindness and respect, who had become her dearest friend and then something more. "What if I don't want to leave?" she asked quietly. Rashid's breath caught. What if I want to stay here, on this island, in this palace?" Zara continued. "What if I've found that home is not a place but a person? What if the life I should have had is the one I'm living now, with you?" "Zara, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to," she interrupted gently. "I want to. Rashid ibn Malik al-Zahir, I love you, not because of a curse or a bargain or a magical spell. I love you because you are kind and wise and gentle, because you value my mind as much as my appearance, because with you I am truly seen and truly known, because you are my best friend and my heart's companion." She took his hands in hers. "So I am not leaving, unless you want me to? Now that you're human again, free of the curse, perhaps you want to return to the world? To find your place in it once more?" Rashid shook his head, tears streaming down his very human face. "I want nothing more than I want you. These past months with you have been happier than 70 years before them. You brought light back into my existence. You made me feel human again before the curse ever broke. And if you will have me, if you could possibly feel for me even a fraction of what I feel for you, then I would spend the rest of my days making you happy." "Then we stay," Zara said simply, "together." Rashid pulled her into his arms, human arms now, but the embrace felt just as safe as it had when he was beast. "Together," he agreed, "always." They stood in the moonlit garden, holding each other, as around them the island bloomed back into full life. The palace's walls gleamed white once more. The fountains sang their impossible songs. The very air thrummed with magic, but magic of a different kind now, not the binding curse of a vengeful sorcerer, but the transformative magic of true love freely given. Above them the moon smiled down, bearing witness to a promise kept and a curse broken, and a love that had seen past appearances to the truth beneath. And the moonlit rose, reborn at their feet, glowed with silver light and sang its silent song, a melody of transformation and redemption, of patience rewarded and faith vindicated, of love that conquers all. Chapter 12. Return to the world. In the days that followed, Rashid regained his strength. The palace staff, who had been invisible during his cursed state, began to appear. They were revealed to be the servants and courtiers from his original kingdom, also cursed but in a different way, frozen in time, neither alive nor dead, waiting for the spell to break. Now they were restored, and with them came life and laughter. The palace, which had been maintained by magic alone, now bustled with real human activity. Cooks in the kitchen, gardeners tending the flowers, musicians playing in the halls. But the greatest change was in Rashid himself. As a man, he was everything he had been as beast, kind, intelligent, thoughtful, but now he could move freely through the world without inspiring fear. And yet Zara noticed something interesting. "Sometimes," she told him one evening as they walked through the gardens, "I miss the beast." Rashid looked at her in surprise. "Truly, why?" "Because he was unique," Zara replied. "Magnificent in his own way. And he was mine. No one else saw him as I did. Now you are handsome, and I know other women will see that and want you." Rashid stopped walking and turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Zara, I spent 70 years alone. 70 years waiting for someone, anyone, who could see past appearances to the person beneath. You were the only one in all that time who looked at a monster and saw a man." He lifted her hands to his lips and kissed them gently. "I could have the appearance of the most handsome prince in all the world, and it would mean nothing if you were not beside me. You saw me when I was my most unlovable. You loved me at my worst. That is a gift beyond price, and I will treasure it, and you, every day for the rest of my life. Then I suppose we should discuss the future. This island is beautiful, but we cannot hide here forever. You have a kingdom to reclaim, Rashid. Your family may be gone, but your lands, your people, they exist somewhere." Rashid shook his head slowly. "The curse was complete. My kingdom was erased from existence, from history itself. There is nowhere to return to. This island, this palace, they are all that remain." "Then we will build something new," Zara said firmly. "We will make this island a haven for those who need one, a place where people can come to heal, to learn, to grow. We will fill this palace with scholars and artists, teachers and students. We will create a new kind of kingdom, not one built on power and conquest, but on knowledge and compassion." Rashid looked at her with growing admiration. "You have given this considerable thought." "I have had time to think these past days," Zara admitted, "while you were recovering. This place is magical, Rashid. It exists between the world and dream. What better location for a center of learning? A library that welcomes all, a garden where the wounded can heal, a palace where everyone is treated with respect and dignity." "A paradise," Rashid murmured. "Not just for us, but for others. Yes, I like this vision very much. But what of your family, your father? Will you bring them here?" Zara's expression grew complicated. "My father, yes. He would be happy here, I think. He could live his remaining years in comfort and peace. But my sisters..." She told Rashid then about Yasmin and Layla's treachery, about how they had tried to make her break her promise, about their jealousy and cruelty. Rashid's face darkened with anger. "They nearly killed me with their interference. If you had arrived even one day later, the curse would have become permanent. I would have died, and you would have lost any chance at happiness." "But I didn't arrive too late," Zara said gently. "And you didn't die. We are here, together, and that is what matters. My sisters acted from jealousy and small-mindedness, but I will not let their actions poison my happiness. I will forgive them, though I do not think I can forget." "You are far kinder than they deserve," Rashid observed. "Perhaps," Zara agreed. "But I have learned from you what it means to be truly kind. Not just to those who treat us well, but to those who wrong us. That is the harder kindness, but also the more important one. They decided to make a visit to the city to bring Hassan to the island if he wished, and to settle matters with Zara's sisters. The ship was prepared, the same enchanted vessel that had carried Zara back and forth before, and 3 days later they sailed into the harbor of her home city. The sight that greeted them caused quite a stir. Zara's return was surprising enough, but her companion, a tall, handsome prince in fine clothes, caused immediate speculation. By the time they reached her father's house, half the city had heard that the merchant's youngest daughter had returned with a mysterious suitor. Hassan was in the garden when they arrived. He looked up at the sound of footsteps, and his face transformed with joy when he saw his daughter. "Zara, oh my child!" He hurried to embrace her, then stopped, noticing the stranger at her side. "Who?" "Father," Zara said gently. "This is Prince Rashid ibn Malik al-Zahir. He was the beast. The curse has been broken." Hassan stared at Rashid in shock, his mind struggling to reconcile the handsome young man before him with the monster he had encountered a year ago. But then he saw the eyes, those distinctive amber eyes, and recognition dawned. "It's truly you? The curse is lifted?" "Thanks to your daughter," Rashid said, bowing respectfully. "Her love broke the enchantment. Sir, I know that our acquaintance began in fear and threats, but I hope we can start anew. I love your daughter, and with your blessing, I wish to marry her." Hassan looked between them, his beloved Zara and this transformed prince, and saw the love that radiated between them. He saw how Zara looked at Rashid with complete trust and adoration. He saw how Rashid gazed at her as if she were the most precious thing in existence. "You have my blessing," Hassan said, tears streaming down his face. "And my thanks, Prince Rashid, for treating my daughter with the honor and respect she deserves. I see now that this strange fate was not a curse after all, but a blessing in disguise." The reunion was interrupted by Yasmin and Layla, who had heard the commotion and come to investigate. When they saw Zara with a handsome prince, their faces went through a rapid series of expressions: shock, envy, and finally calculation. "Little sister!" Yasmin exclaimed with false enthusiasm. "You've returned, and with such distinguished company." "This is Prince Rashid," Zara said coolly. "The beast, as you called him. His curse is broken." The sisters' eyes widened. They understood immediately. While they had tried to sabotage Zara, she had instead gained a prince. While they had tried to keep her from happiness, she had found love. While they had schemed for petty jealousies, she had broken an ancient curse and won a kingdom. We are so happy for you," Layla managed to say, though the words nearly choked her. "Are you?" Zara asked quietly. "Are you happy for me, sisters? You who changed the clocks and hid my mirror? You who delayed my departure and tried to make me break my promise? You who nearly caused Rashid's death with your interference?" The sisters' faces went pale. They had not expected their treachery to be discovered. "We were only trying to help," Yasmin said weakly. "We thought you should stay with father." "Do not lie," Rashid said, his voice cold. "Your sister has told me everything. You acted from envy and spite. You cared nothing for your father or your sister's happiness. You sought only to bring Zara down to your level because you could not bear to see her rise above it." He took a step forward, and despite his human form, there was something in his bearing that recalled the beast. Power barely leashed, anger tightly controlled. "I should punish you for what you did, for the pain you caused. I have magic at my command now, magic that could transform you as I was transformed. Perhaps you should experience what it is to be monsters on the outside as you are on the inside." Yasmin and Layla fell to their knees, begging for mercy. But it was Zara who spoke. "No, Rashid. They are my sisters, and despite everything, I do not wish them harm. Let them live with the consequences of their actions, the knowledge that they nearly destroyed their sister's happiness and their own honor. Let them see us happy together and know that their schemes failed. That is punishment enough. Rashid looked at Zara with profound respect. You are wiser and kinder than I. Very well. Your sisters will be spared any enchantment, but I do have something to say to them. He turned back to Yasmin and Layla, his amber eyes hard. You asked for pearls and mirrors. You received material wealth but gained no wisdom. Your sister asked for a flower and gained love, knowledge, and a kingdom. Perhaps in this you can learn what true value means. Perhaps you can learn that beauty fades, gold tarnishes, but love and honor last forever. Now, Rashid continued, your father is welcome to come live with us on the island in comfort and peace for his remaining years. But you too, you will stay here. You will live with your choices. And if you ever find it in yourselves to change, to become the women you could be rather than the women you are, then perhaps one day you may visit. But until then, you are not welcome in our home. The sisters wept, whether from shame or merely from losing access to the wealth and magic of the island. It was unclear. But Hassan embraced both his elder daughters and whispered something to them that no one else could hear. Perhaps words of wisdom, perhaps simply a father's love. Then he turned to Zara. I will come with you, my daughter. I wish to see this magical place, to live my final years in peace and beauty. And I wish to see you happy, which clearly you are. And so it was arranged. Hassan gathered his belongings, said goodbye to the house he had lived in for decades, and boarded the ship with Zara and Rashid. As they sailed away from the harbor, Zara looked back one last time at her sisters standing on the dock and felt pity mixed with her anger. Perhaps one day they will change, she murmured. Perhaps, Rashid agreed, putting his arm around her. People can change. I am proof of that. A beast became a man. A curse became a blessing. Loneliness became love. If such transformations are possible, then perhaps your sisters too can transform. But that is their journey to make, Zara said, leaning into his embrace. Ours lies ahead. The ship sailed toward the enchanted island, toward home, toward a future bright with promise. And behind them, two sisters stood on a dock, contemplating their choices, their jealousies, and the opportunity they had squandered through their own small-mindedness. Chapter 13. The New Kingdom. The wedding was held in the garden where the moonlit rose bloomed, under a full moon that seemed to smile down on the proceedings. Hassan walked his daughter down the aisle of flower petals, tears of joy streaming down his face. The palace's restored servants and courtiers attended, along with scholars and travelers who had already begun to arrive, drawn by rumors of a magical island where all were welcome. Zara wore a gown of silver silk that seemed to glow in the moonlight, with jasmine woven into her dark hair. Rashid wore robes of deep blue embroidered with gold, looking every inch the prince he had been born to be. But when they exchanged vows, it was not their appearance that mattered. It was the love that shone in their eyes, the promises they made not just with words, but with their entire hearts. I vow to see you always, Zahra promised, not just with my eyes, but with my heart, to look past surfaces to the truth beneath, to honor you in every form you might take. I vow to cherish you always, Rashid replied, for the kindness that saved me, for the courage that transformed me, for the love that redeemed me. You are my heart's home, today and always. When they kissed, the moonlit rose released a burst of silver light, and every flower in the garden bloomed simultaneously, filling the air with fragrance so sweet it was almost intoxicating. It was as if the island itself was celebrating, as if the magic that had once been a curse was now a blessing, transforming everything it touched into beauty. After the wedding, they began the work of building their new kingdom. True to Zara's vision, the island became a haven for seekers of knowledge and healing. The library was open to scholars from across the known world. The gardens became a place where physicians studied medicinal plants and philosophers contemplated the nature of existence. Artists came to the island and created works of stunning beauty. Musicians composed symphonies inspired by the magical atmosphere. Poets wrote verses that captured the essence of transformation and redemption. The palace, once a prison of solitude, became a vibrant center of culture and learning. Rashid proved to be a wise and just ruler, his 70 years of suffering having given him deep compassion for others' pain. He welcomed the outcast and the forgotten, the wounded and the lost. Under his guidance, the island became known as a place where everyone could find acceptance, where past mistakes did not define you, where transformation was always possible. Zahra worked alongside him, her natural kindness and wisdom complementing his leadership. She established schools for children from poor families, teaching them to read and write, to think critically, and question assumptions. She created workshops where artisans could learn new skills. She organized the library so that knowledge was accessible to all, not just the privileged few. Together, they built something remarkable, a kingdom based not on power or wealth, but on knowledge, compassion, and the fundamental belief that every person deserved to be seen, valued, and given the opportunity to grow. Hassan lived to see his daughter's triumph, spending his final years in contentment, surrounded by the love of his youngest daughter and the respect of his son-in-law. When he passed peacefully in his sleep 5 years after the wedding, he died knowing that Zara was safe, happy, and living a life of purpose and meaning. As for Yasmin and Layla, they did eventually change, though it took many years. The loss of their father, combined with their own aging and the loneliness that came from their reputations as jealous, spiteful women, slowly wore away their pride. They came to understand what they had lost through their jealousy, not just access to a magical island, but the chance to share in their sister's happiness, to be part of something larger than themselves. 10 years after the wedding, a ship arrived at the island bearing 2 middle-aged women, humbler and wiser than the vain girls they had once been. Yasmin and Layla came not to claim their sister's wealth, but to apologize, to seek forgiveness, and to learn if there might still be a place for them in the new world Zara and Rashid had built. Zara, who had learned from Rashid that everyone deserves a chance at redemption, welcomed them. Not immediately and not without conditions. They would need to prove their sincerity through actions, not just words. But she gave them the opportunity to change, to become better versions of themselves. And slowly, painfully, they did. Yasmin learned to value inner beauty over outer appearances. Layla learned that true worth could not be measured in gold and jewels. They would never be as wise or kind as their younger sister, but they became decent people, contributing members of the island community, aunts who doted on Zara and Rashid's children when they came along. For yes, there were children, 3 of them, 2 daughters and a son. The eldest daughter had her mother's dark eyes and her father's amber gold hair. The middle son had his father's intelligence and his mother's compassion. The youngest daughter inherited both parents' love of knowledge and their gift for seeing past surfaces to essential truths. They grew up on the magical island, learning from the scholars and artists, playing in the enchanted gardens, listening to their father's stories of transformation and their mother's tales of courage. They understood from an early age that what mattered was not how you looked, but who you were. That true beauty lay in kindness, that real strength came from compassion, that the greatest magic in the world was love freely given. And in the garden, through all the passing years, the moonlit rose continued to bloom. Each full moon it would glow with that same silver light, its petals opening to the night sky, its silent song filling the air with a melody only the heart could hear. It became tradition that on the anniversary of the curse's breaking, Rashid and Zara would walk together to the rose garden. They would stand beside the pool, holding hands, remembering the journey that had brought them together. The fear and the courage, the loneliness and the companionship, the curse and the redemption. "Do you ever miss it?" Zara asked one such anniversary, many years into their marriage. "Being the beast? Having that power, that presence?" Rashid smiled, the lines around his eyes, no longer amber but still holding that same depth, crinkling with humor. "Sometimes, but then I remember that I have you, and that is worth more than any power. Besides," he added, pulling her close, "you fell in love with the beast. I must always remember that and strive to be worthy of that love." "You were always worthy," Zara replied softly. "That was the secret of the curse, I think. You were always human, always good, always deserving of love. The beast was just a costume the curse forced you to wear. But the real you, the you I loved, was always there, waiting to be seen." They kissed in the moonlight, the moonlit rose glowing beside them, and the magic of the island thrummed with contentment. This was the happy ending that so many stories promise but few achieve, not because the curse was broken or the monster transformed, but because two people chose to see each other truly, to love each other completely, and to build a life together based on that foundation of genuine recognition and respect. The Enchanted Island still exists, they say, somewhere between the world of reality and the realm of dreams. If you sail far enough, with an open heart and a willingness to see beyond appearances, you might find it. You might glimpse its white palace gleaming on a hilltop, its gardens blooming with impossible flowers, its library filled with the wisdom of ages. And on nights when the full moon rises, if you are very lucky, you might see a silver rose glowing in a garden, and beside it, two figures holding hands, an aging prince and princess, still in love after all these years, still grateful for the curse that became a blessing, still living proof that transformation is possible, that love can conquer even the darkest magic, and that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with the simplest request: "Bring me a moonlit rose." Epilogue. The legacy. And so, dear listener, our tale comes to its end. Though endings are never truly endings, are they? They are merely pauses in the great story that continues forever. Many years have passed since Rashid's curse was broken. The prince and princess have grown old together, their love deepening with each passing season. The island has become legendary, spoken of in whispers in markets and caravanserais, a place where the wounded can heal, where the lost can be found, where everyone is seen for who they truly are. The moonlit rose still blooms, and its legend has spread far and wide. They say that if you are pure of heart and brave of spirit, if you value inner beauty over outer appearance, if you understand that love means seeing truly, then you might receive a cutting of the rose to plant in your own garden, and it will bloom for you, reminding you that magic exists in the world, that curses can be broken, that transformation is always possible. The children of Rashid and Zara grew to adulthood and spread across the world, carrying their parents' wisdom with them. They established schools and libraries, gardens and healing centers, places where the principles of the island, seeing truly, loving completely, judging not by appearance but by character, could take root and flourish. And sometimes, on quiet nights, when the moon is full and the air is thick with possibility, travelers report seeing a great ship sailing under silvered sails, carrying passengers to a mysterious island that appears on no map. They say it is a ship of second chances, of transformations, of new beginnings. They say it is captained by the descendants of a merchant's daughter, who was brave enough to see a beast as a man, and a cursed prince who learned that true humanity has nothing to do with appearance and everything to do with how we treat others. The story of the moonlit rose has been told and retold, passing from grandmother to grandchild, from teacher to student, from friend to friend. Each telling adds new details, new lessons, new magic. But at its heart the story remains the same. Love sees truly. Courage transforms, kindness redeems, and sometimes the thing we fear most becomes the thing we treasure most, if only we are brave enough to look beyond surfaces to the truth beneath.